Good afternoon, everyone. We're just taking a few more minutes for people to join in, those who are having any technical difficulties to do so. We'll start in a few minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the UN in Sri Lanka and the International Trade Center, we are delighted to welcome you. This is the second of a series of webinars planned by the UN in Sri Lanka in collaboration with UN agencies and partners from the private sector to support Sri Lankan SMEs in an environment of acute challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's webinar, customized for Sri Lankan SMEs, offering insights and guidance to small businesses searching for ways to cope with the operational stress generated by COVID-19, will be delivered by Mr. Juan F. Hoyos, Advisor, Sustainable Inclusive Value Chains at ITC, and Ms. Selina Pires, who is Director of Business Development at Celine, a fair trade certified handloom company in Sri Lanka and a social enterprise. Mr. Hoyos has a background in strategy and supply and value chain developments. In his capacity, Mr. Hoyos has successfully supported the strengthening of the international competitiveness of SMEs in Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, and South Pacific Islands. Mr. Hoyos holds a master's in business administration from EFIT University in Colombia, a master in international business from Connecticut State University in the USA, and currently he's a researcher at SMEs Sustainability Competencies. Ms. Selina Pires was previously Deputy Director at the Office of National Unity and Reconciliation of the Government of Sri Lanka. She started her career at the UNIDO in Vienna and continues to consult government and international organizations on social business, SME, livelihood development programs. She is a graduate of law from the University of Hull and has master's degrees in international business law from University College London and advanced international relations from Diplomatic Academy in Vienna, Austria. She continues to be a passionate advocate for equitable development for women in Sri Lanka. The International Trade Center, which is presenting this webinar today, is a joint agency of the World Trade Organization and the UN and the United Nations that assists small and medium-sized businesses developing and transition economies to become more competitive in global markets, thereby continuing to for sustainable development within the framework of Aid for Trade agenda and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to thank the wonderful team from the ITC in Geneva and Colombo and my colleagues from the UN Resident Coordinator's Office for their support in bringing you this webinar. Once again, a warm welcome to all of you, and I will now pass it on to Mr. Juan F. Hoyos to take us through the webinar. Juan, over to you. Juan, you need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to unmute myself and I was not working. Thank you, Azam. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, to join us the webinar today. And really, on behalf of Selena and myself, we really thank the opportunity to present our thoughts today on this specific topic that is so relevant nowadays in terms of how we are coping, how SMEs and women entrepreneurs are coping with the pandemic that we are passing by or through. As you were mentioning, ITC, the joint agency of United Nations and WTO, and we are dedicated just to support SMEs all around the world to be more competitive and to reach international markets. Inside the ITC, we have the SheTrades initiative, and then I will explain a little bit what is the SheTrades initiative briefly. So the initiative is only dedicated for women entrepreneurs who are usually in developing or least developed countries. And then we basically manage the 7 pillars, that is champion quality data, enact fair policies, secure government contracts, strike business deals, enable market access, unlock financial services, and grant ownership rights. So this is our route to work with these companies, with the small entrepreneurs, and then basically the strike business deals and enable market access. In these 2 pillars, we are focusing the capacity buildings and all the partnership with international or national big corporations to help women along the value chain. At the end, what we want to do is, our goal is to connect 3 million women to market by 2021. And connection, it doesn't mean exactly that you are buying to, you get buyers, international buyers, and then you are selling to those buyers, but it's connection in terms of capacity buildings or participating in events or international fairs, etc. Then up to now, up to the end of last year, 2019, we already had 230 events, more than 10,000 women directly trained, thousands of users in the SheTrades application, and then I will refer to the application right now. And these women who've been supporting or working with us, they reach already $91 million of international trade. We have a network of more than 800,000 people all around the world, and then more than 200 institutions, they are committed to us to help us to reach the goal of the 3 million women by 2021. And just to finalize the presentation, because I don't want to spend a lot of time in the presentation of SheTrades, but it's more in the content. But it's an invitation to everybody to participate and to register in the SheTrades.com in our website. Our website provides, in this specific website, we have more than 20,000 women entrepreneurs and international buyers connected. So you have the opportunity to do networkings, to participate in forums, and then we have as well a learning area that is called the SheTrades Virtual Learning Space. In this learning area was launched in December last year, 2019, and then in this learning area you can find more than 20 modules fully for free, and in expert readiness and logistics, and then you can follow them in your computer or in your mobile. It's very easy and it's not requiring a lot of data or a lot of internet. And then you can as well, in the learning area of SheTrades, you can find more than 50 webinars that we've been doing in legal aspects or so many things. So the invitation is of course, this webinar will talk about certain things. A webinar is never enough to close all the gaps or the concerns that SMEs have all around. But then invitation is to participate in this platform where you can find very in a simple manner how people can learn how to be more competitive, and specifically in these times. So I'm going forward to the topic itself, that is the COVID impact on SMEs in terms of logistics, cash flows, and consumer preferences. Actually, I'm not discovering new things with this topic. What I want to just is to have a summarize on the things all SMEs are suffering all around the world for the same things. And then there are three main pillars of sufferings, if we can call it like this. Supply chain disruptions, that basically we have delays in the storage and with inventory. According to Accenture, that is a consulting company, a big consulting international company, by mid-May, 28% of the global capacity decline. So because actually, since the flights stop, even passengers flights are full with cargo on the bottom. So the 28% of the capacity is reduced. But this is a call for everybody, that means that not all goods are stopped. So we need to, and then later I will explain, we need to explore how we will cope with this kind of potential stagnation that is not a real stagnation, because shipments are moving, cargo planes are moving, ships are moving, trains are moving all around the world. So we need is just to explore how we can keep alive our supply chain. The other one is, of course, the drop in demand and cash flow, and lack of cash flow. 76% of the SMEs have seen a decline in revenue, 20% of the small business considering layoffs, and 25% they say they will need a loan to survive. And the last one is change of consumer preferences. With this situation, with the lack of money in families, in companies, the consumer preferences have been changing. And that's why this is a call as well to change the offer that you as a company you have. So I'm going directly to how to respond to a crisis. So I'm separating this my presentation in two sides. First of all, the immediate actions that you need to take, how to survive the crisis. But then the second one, and in a way, well, both of them are so important in a way, because the other one is how to grow and how to overcome, and then how you prepare your company for the new normal that we will face. So in general, we as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of webinars, but then at the beginning of April, I'm sorry, we start, we already delivered a series of webinars in responding to a crisis. You can find them as well in the SheTrades. And then this webinar is like building resilience and responding to a crisis, was delivered by Maersk. That is one of our partners, of SheTrades partners all around the world. And then the initial aspect, and then the message here is companies need to prepare for a crisis. Of course, 99% of SMEs were not preparing, because nobody in the world was expecting this kind of situation. So anybody was preparing the companies for these kind of situations. So now we are in the middle of the crisis, and then we need to respond to that crisis. But once we leave the crisis, you need to start implementing in your own companies as well the whole proactive approach of resilience. That is first understanding what can go wrong in your company, because actually we have COVID-19, but probably we will have COVID-20, hope no, but or earthquakes or any other things even related to your own region that cannot respond to a generic or worldwide crisis, but is in your country, in your region. And then companies need to be always prepared with a plan B, with a plan C, etc. So the generic approach is understand what we can go, then to mitigate how can avoid what that case, in case that the risk is realizing, then a plan what to do if it happens. Of course, is what I'm saying. Right now, we are not in that situation. So we starting COVID with a crisis immediately. So we need to respond right now, immediately, what to do now, and then how to recover. How do I come back? And then how can I adapt? And then this is one of the messages that I have here as well. Is super important that no way to come back to the way you were doing businesses before the crisis, because the world is changing, consumers are changing, logistics is changing, restrictions are changing. So for sure, you need to change how you are approaching your company, your customers, etc. this information that this presentation, we will share this presentation with participants. So don't worry if I bring a lot of information in the next 2 or 3 slides, because you will have the time to see peacefully at home this information. But I just want to give some examples of the components that you need to face or to address in this situation. As I'm saying, as a matter of, because of time restrictions, I don't cover all the 4 topics, but it's just give you some examples. So the 4 key business components that you need to face right now, or to analyze or to assess what is the situation of your company, is with your operations, your people, your customers, and your finances and legality. In terms of operations, we have the inventories, the suppliers, and the production. And then your people is the well-being of your people, the head count of how many people you have, how many people you really need, working environment, employment, engagement, and internal communication. I'm sorry. Then with your customers, you need customer engagement, alternative customers, product portfolio, and external communications. And finally, for your finances and legality, you can check the cash in the bank, the cash in, cash out, legal or tax obligations, and financial support. Sometimes people don't see the whole picture when they are in a crisis. So they see very important things, but not, or very urgent things, but not important things. So that's why I really love this approach of the 4 components, because that will give you a full picture of your situation, of the situation of your company. So you need to start asking questions to yourself. Example, in your operations, inventory, this is the kind of questions that you need to ask for yourself. What are my stock levels, finished products, in process, raw materials, in relationship to the expected demand? And then in terms of suppliers, how are my main suppliers doing? Any risk they won't be able to deliver on their commitments? And then, in this point, it's important to say, yeah, but nobody can move. That's not true, because in many countries, essential goods are moving. And then even for certain areas or certain sectors in the country, you still can move. And then, for example, big corporations like UPS, Maersk, DHL, or even small and local corporations that move logistics, they are allowed to move. So we need to reshape that logistics that we are facing, that we are having before, and then how we can keep move my goods or my services if this is the case. And then, for example, the last one is production. Am I able to meet my current contractual obligation with customers? Probably I don't have a stock right now. I can produce, but I don't have a stock, and then I cannot ship to my customer. So there is a legal obligation here. So I need to check that. So the invitation is to have all the 4 components with all the elements, and then to write in a table that we will provide that table to you as well, to write in a table the questions that are guiding questions for inventory, for suppliers, for production, for well-being, headcount, and then you start the possible answers, and then you put the current state of your company. So, for example, in this case, we have the inventory. I have a smiling face because probably in my company, well, in this case, my company, I had enough stock. So probably I can still produce my goods. But then, for example, in this case, production is a sad phase because I'm not able to deliver my own obligations. Because in this case, for example, I have my stocks, but I don't have the logistics. I cannot deliver to my customers the product, the finished products. So I need to take immediate actions in those places when you have sad phases or question marks. For example, in suppliers, I have a question mark here that I don't know. I don't know what will happen with my suppliers. So anyway, if I have question mark, I don't have the answers, or it's a sad phase, I really need to take immediate actions. And then I write, for example, in the suppliers, talk to my suppliers and review commitments. With the production, talk to my customers and negotiate with them, telling them it's force majeure, I have my products here, but I cannot deliver it because the logistic service is not working well in my region or in my area. So the message here is you need to have a clear picture of your situation, not a scary picture right now. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what I'm gonna do. It's like one by one, and then you can see, for example, that you need to face the customers and then the finances and legality. Finances is one of the major issues that all SMEs are facing all around the world, and especially and women-owned corporations as well. So we need to address all of them, but then, for example, in the example of cash out, so the question is, do I have enough money to cover immediate payables? Probably I don't have them, so I need to renegotiate that or talk to banks. I mean, many banks, I don't know, and Selena will expand the situation in Sri Lanka, what is happening there, but many banks in many countries, they are delaying the payments because they know people stop production, people stop salaries, because it's not only if you have a company and then you have you are not selling, you are not getting the money from your customers, but as well, if you have employees and then you stop those employees, they stop the salary as well, probably. And then there is no money in their pockets, so that you need. Banks are super open right now to renegotiate debts, to delay the payments, etc. So here we have how we can adapt, and then this is the beautiful part of SMEs. The advantages of SMEs are basically, I mean, I love SMEs because look at what I have here: less bureaucratic, rapid decision-making, flexible to quickly adapting activities, rapid international communication, and fast learning. So if you can see this list of 5 advantages of SMEs, you will realize that you are in a much better position than the big corporations. And this is what is happening right now in the world. SMEs are moving faster, are moving, really adapting so quickly to the new situation that they can recover faster than the big corporations. But for that, we need to, I have 4 kind of pillars to advise how to move. That is, drive customer demand via marketing framework, leverage shipping to reach customers, improve cash flow, and have to improve online presence. Yeah, but this is very simple to say, but do it. So I have some tips here how to do it. And for example, I'm not gonna read all of them, but I'm gonna highlight some of them that they are really important. So for example, in the drive customer demand via marketing framework, you need to adapt your offering. I mean, for example, I'm from Colombia, and in Colombia, the restaurants change completely the way they are selling. I guess, and again, Selena can expand a little bit on this topic. The restaurant changed completely the offer. So usually in all the places you have people going to the restaurants. Now deliveries is the way. And then they improve in deliveries. Even I see a very fancy restaurant in Colombia that is very elegant, very expensive. And of course you say, yeah, but here the price is because the service, is because the place, etc., etc. You can imagine how they are packing the food and delivering the food with instructions how to finalize the preparation of that food to have the same experience that you have in the restaurant to have it at home. So, and still they charge a lot of money. Another case, for example, is we have a company in Ghana. We are working with a tourism company in Ghana, and then suddenly she was designing the strategy, export strategy, when the pandemic started. And then she had to reshape completely the export strategy. And for example, she's now using the lodges not for international customers, but only for local customers, and even using the lodges for different purposes. So she's still making money out of these lodges, out of these facilities, but then she just changed the approach. So this is the main reflection here is like, what is the situation if your company, probably if you are in the food industry, if you are in restaurants, if you are in healthcare, probably your company is not impacted negatively, but positively, and this is great. But if not, how you can reshape the offer you have to your customers, and then to keep moving your capital, to keep selling products. And then Selena has a very beautiful example that she will explain today. Then in terms of shipping, as I was saying earlier, shipping is not changing. I mean, many companies, local companies or big corporations are still moving. And then this is important to understand that we need to just find out in our own region how I can keep moving my goods. So definitely we need to change delivery methods. And then this is the only other part, is communicate timely with customers regarding delivery dates, because these customers were used to have a certain delivery dates. But with COVID right now, as we were saying, with the decline of capacity of transportation, so goods are moving, but they are slower. So you need to keep communicating with your customer. This is what is happening. It will arrive your goods, but probably 1 week later or 2 weeks later, but is safe. So it's important that we keep in mind this connection or this connectivity with the customers. Finally, we have improved cash flow, super critical. There are a few ways, and then one of those ways that is the one that I was mentioning earlier is delaying payments. Negotiate with your bank. I say, my bank, my company is suffering this position, and then I really need to delay the payments. Then cut costs. Sometimes we don't need a lot of. I mean, we can reduce, now that we are not operating at full time, we can reduce certain costs, and then find new channels of selling. I mean, again, Selena, because I love Selena's sample on her own how she moved on, how she's coping the pandemic. She just find out another way to move the goods and to move the capital of her company. So she will know. So it's changing the way you are doing things to receive more money. And then the last one that I want to recommend is access to funds. Governments, it's not only banks, but governments are helping a lot right now. Explore your government through the offices of the governments, of chambers of commerce, or your sectorial associations. How Sri Lankan government is helping these companies through different programs, and or even crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is through internet. You can collect money, somebody who can help you in many ways. For example, I received an email from a friend that is in Mexico. He has a cafe restaurant, and then he's helping a lot of women coffee growers. But then, of course, he stopped selling, and I say, Juan, now I need, if you want, you can record a video for me. I'm just gonna launch a video to help these women, and then it's gonna be a crowdfunding, so people will help him to, well, with money to overcome and to still paying these women coffee growers. And the other option is, like, for example, in Spain, I saw a lot of bars selling beers in advance. So people pay the beer now, and then you can recover it in 1 month when we can leave and get together again to get the beer. So you see, right now it's important to activate the innovative area of our brains and of our teams as well in our company to move and to keep moving the money and moving the goods of our company. And finally, improve the online presence. This is critical for everybody. If you don't have an online presence right now, so do it or improve it, because nowadays everybody is buying online. And even we were used to do on B2B, that is business to business. Now B2C, that is business to consumer is growing. So many right now, more consumers are buying from businesses, not directly from distributors or retail, but it's directly from the producer. So you need to improve your presence online, building good websites, improving your digital marketing solutions, using Facebook, using LinkedIn, using Twitter, using Instagram, whatever, to reach your customers. You need to as well to offer different modes of payment. For example, PayPal is accepted in Sri Lanka, or using QR codes as well as a mode of payment, electronic payments. And finally, you need to be aware of the fraud threats, because nowadays, with everybody going on internet, the fraud is all around, and then you need to be really careful with that topic. So I'm stopping from now here, and then I will give to Selena the floor to tell us what is her experience with micro and small corporations in Sri Lanka. Go ahead, Selena. Thank you. You are still in mute. Yeah, now got it.
Yeah. Thank you, Juan. I'm just going to share my screen so that it makes it easier. I think everyone has the screen. So thanks, Juan. I think the checklist was amazing. I wish I had that 2 months ago, but thank you very much for sharing that international experience with us in Sri Lanka. So what I'm going to do is really run through a real life example, actually a story of how we at Celine, which is a handloom company in Sri Lanka. So we're in the traditional craft sector. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, we just, I mean, no one really sees craft as a kind of a mover and shaker in this country. But I think this example will show you all that there is potential in this field also to kind of overcome and take advantage of this situation. So before I move into the case study, for those people who have joined us from the international sphere, I'm just going to take you into an overview of what has happened in Sri Lanka. So I think since 2016, 17, we've had major droughts and the Easter bombing last year, and now COVID this year. I think we've been preparing for COVID for the last 5 years, you know. There's been a downward trend in the economic growth, and now going ahead, the economy is going to face a contraction, and, you know, we need to be vigilant and really be innovative if you're going to ride this storm. So there's a great report online, the KPMG deal advisory. There's a link here. When you get this presentation, you can access it, which talks about the high impact sectors, the medium impact sectors. I've put it on the presentation here. And because the SMEs are spread throughout these sectors. So we are going to be impacted in various ways depending on where we are. So in order to stimulate economic activity and to support the businesses hit by COVID, the government has offered various financial benefits. If you don't know these things, you definitely have to look into it. Again, the report set out a good understanding of it, and mostly it's a refinancing facility from the banks, low interest working capital loans, which incidentally we are still waiting for. So the point being that even money as a whole is running out in the country, right? So there is an urgency to really kind of innovate, pivot, and make our enterprises profitable and relevant at this point. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the, okay, I think that's better, right into the story, and which is how our company in the handloom sector pivoted to survive, really, because that's where we are. We are in survival mode. So again, here, so this I'm going to talk to you about the story of the people's mask. Celine has, at the beginning of this, in March, mid-March, when this whole crisis happened, I remember our management team, we got together and we sat on our board table, this office where I am now, and we were panicking, you know. We were thinking, how on earth are we going to sell saris and sarongs and the luxury items we have, craft items, in this pandemic? And so the answer to that, the first tip on how to survive this crisis is don't panic. You know, there is an answer, and we are all in this together. So what we started to do was to reach out for help, really rack our brains. How are we going to overcome this crisis? So the ultimatum was set by our chairman, who said absolutely no layoffs in the company until we can survive, until we can afford it. We are going to protect every worker, every employee that we have. So when that ultimatum was set, we started being creative. How are we going to now really take this company forward? Because we also had now a fixed cost to think of. And that ultimatum was also one key point in surviving this crisis, and something that Juan picked up as well. Engaging and protecting your people is absolutely important, because the people are the core of your business. And especially in the SME sector, our people are not just identity cards, or we have a personal relationship with the people we work with. So continuing to see to their safety, continuing to engage them and protect them is absolutely crucial, not just during this period, but to ensure that you have the necessary resources to kick back up when all this is kind of died down, right? So that like I said, that ultimatum was set, and we were in survival mode. We were kind of panicking, but at the same time, we were thinking, okay, no, we needed to do this. And then what we first did was we created a financial map for ourselves, because until you know what your expenses are and what your potential income is, you can't really go ahead. Because even at home, right? Even if you're staying at home, you need to know what's coming in and coming out to know what meal you're going to cook. So it's very, very simple. Expenses had to meet income. In this couple of months, we anticipated it to be about 6 months, and that is what we worked towards. So very quickly, we did a cash flow forecast. We assumed various scenarios. We assumed the best scenario, that work would start during April, which didn't happen. The worst, best scenario, and the worst scenario, that work would only resume kind of next year, which I'm hoping won't be the case. But then the idea is that you prepare for all these different scenarios. And like I said, you understand your expenses, and you have to cut back on your non-essentials. So you have to understand what you can cancel. If there are any payments or activities that you can cancel, you need to cancel them. And also you have to see, okay, you can defer some expenses or activities. And then there are things that you absolutely have to do in order to take you through this next month. And the key is that you have to protect your capital reserves to kickstart your business. Because finally, if you are going to spend all the money that you have in surviving this period, and at the rate that the loans are also in a way getting scarce, you won't have necessary resources to kickstart. So it's a balance. You have to continue to understand that right now we need to kind of go into that survival mode. So then what are your options of bridging these shortfalls? And also understand the impact. Okay, it's very easy to say, I'm going to take a loan, I'm going to help me through this, but we also have to pay back loans, even at a lowered interest. So all these options have to be really gauged and really, really thought of if we are going to survive this period. And like I've said, you study your government measures, and you select your final course of action, and you keep monitoring weekly. I would say weekly, monitor where you are, monitor the financial health of your company, because that's really what governs you and what is the backbone of all the operations that you're going to take. So with all this in mind, and this didn't take a lot of time, right? You have to be really fast. What we did was we created face masks. So handloom is fabric, and what can you make from fabric during a crisis? Masks, right? And we can't go for the medical grade mask, so we went for the fabric face coverings, and it's been a hit. And I am so proud to announce that, being a handloom company working in like the rural parts of this country, today we have done over 100,000 masks in less than a month. So, it's absolutely fantastic with what SMEs, I think what Juan also picked up on, is what SMEs can do, because we are small, we are agile, and decision making is so fast, what we can do if we set our mind to it. So I'm going to take you a little bit through that process of some of the tips that we learned, some of the mistakes that we made while pivoting to survive. And the first is you have to be alert. You have to have your ears so open, because crisis is opportunity. And that's the reason, if we were sitting on our seats saying, okay, it's handloom, what are we going to do, and all of that, that was never really going to take us out of this crisis. So we have to be alert, and we have to start thinking outside the box, and also don't diversify from your core competencies. I mean, if I have essentials, if we think, okay, food is an essential, everyone's talking about food, all of that, but we can't just go into food. We can't pivot into areas that we are not good at. And you really have to deeply understand what you as a business are good at, because if you pivot right now into something that you're not good at, you won't be competitive and you won't be fast enough to get that market advantage. And you'd rather kind of stay put until an opportunity comes your way. At least that's what I have seen also from some of the other examples. And also check for and forecast the regulatory restrictions, because we saw there were other fair trade vendors working on this mask across the world. And we saw they started on the product development, they started on the work, and they didn't realize that their governments had either put in regulatory restrictions, that is not to be able to export masks, or they were not able to forecast that the restriction will come, and all the work that they invested in this product development was finally to waste, right? So right now as an SME, if you are not in the essential sector, you need to be in the essential sector. But you need to find out what you can do to get into that essential sector. And I think going ahead, even after this period, I think it's absolutely necessary for businesses to have a product portfolio, a product mix that can be in these various markets. So while you are looking for these new ideas, you also need to understand that these new ways of thinking and reacting are going to be our future. This is not just going to stop in this period of time, right? So as a handloom company right now, we need to understand, okay, what are the various markets we can be in, and then start our product development to be in these markets. And being a social enterprise, we were very conscious that whatever product we pivoted into didn't create any negative social or environmental impact, because it's important, like all these problems in the world are because we as humans have completely misused our resources, right? So when you are pivoting, when you are thinking of what to do next, what to survive, don't forget that you need this world to survive. And that is something I really wanted to put into this, because it's not something that businesses usually think of, but it's so important going ahead. And speed is of essence. Like there's the word speed in my office now. If you have an inquiry, you answer it in an hour. Quotations have to go in an hour. Everything has to be so fast, because this crisis is so uncertain, so unpredictable. And if you're not able to really to be fast, you're going to lose out, right? And we found, like, in that speed, we made a little mistake, because when we first developed the mask, we put the mask out, we put the product out, and it's only after it went to the customer, we realized that a specification had gone wrong. Like our sample development room hadn't communicated with the production, and one mask had a little bit of a size variation. I mean, yes, because of the speed, we needed to do, and in hindsight, we would have done the same thing. But now looking back, and my advice to any SME would be, ensure that you have a foolproof product, because if you don't, it means that you have to spend some money and really invest in kind of replacing the product to make sure that, you will keep getting these orders. And another mistake that we made was obviously you have to cost your product and, kind of do it the way that you've always been doing. But we didn't account for the fact that crisis meant working from home, crisis meant sudden curfews, and all of these different things. And sometimes the cost that we had put into our product didn't account for those contingencies. So the first batch of masks that went was actually at break even, which is not ideal at this situation. So always cost your product at this moment for taking into account those contingencies. Like Juan said, negotiate with your suppliers. Everyone's in the same situation. And I think there's a spirit of collaboration that has really built through. And, that is something that we have to all use to our advantage to make sure our product goes fast and correct into the market. And I'm just going to take your slide back here. So I could have just sold a simple mask, right? But no, how did we marketed it as the people's mask? This was an initiative by the World Fair Trade Organization in Asia. And, it's not just a simple mask. It's a people's mask. It's a mask that's made by people, the hands that touch it, by artisans. And there's a power behind it. I think you're already feeling some emotions about this mask. So that is how you differentiate even an essential with your brand. So our brand has always been standing up for its people, for our planet, for doing the right thing. And that is how we managed to put the values behind our brand into selling even an essential product. So even if it's, like I said, even if it's an essential product, you can differentiate that product with your brand. And as Juan said, we have to, like, selling online is a must. Like, that's the only way we managed to work through the curfew. And luckily we had just set up our online store, and if we hadn't, it would have been a really big problem. So, like, as Juan said, if you don't have online presence, get online presence. But in the Sri Lankan context, I wouldn't just put your business only online, because I feel there's a huge potential that Sri Lanka has, like local SMEs has, because the country is going towards a local economy. And I feel that your neighborhood can be your market. So have that balance, strike that balance, like try to understand who you are, what your market is, what your product is. Definitely have an online presence, but also understand that there can be other markets that you will miss out if you only start focusing on this. Again, just as any time, we have targets for our masks, and we monitor our expenses daily, because, like I said, the financial health of the business matters. Income has to meet expense, and if we kind of shift anything, it means that everything that we're doing won't really kind of contribute to the ultimate goal, which is to ensure that no one in our company is laid off and that we survive this period. And another tip is that even in crisis, people don't want a bad product. They need a good product. So I told you that we made a mistake with our first batch of masks. When that happened, customer was king. If someone complained, we sent a new batch of masks. There was absolutely no question about trying to make excuses. None of that. We sent a new batch of masks, and that was received very well by the customer. And we made sure we communicated. My staff, they worked day, night, answering emails, making calls, helping people via the phone to order online. And, I think one customer even wrote back to us, said that our communication was as good, like better than our mask or something like that. So, just because it's crisis, no one's going to take a bad product, no one's going to take a bad service. And that's something as SMEs, as any business, that we really need to be very, very conscious of. Towards the final part of the presentation. So now what we're doing is, now that we've reached our target of 100,000 plus masks, now we are thinking, okay, now we need to be ahead of our competition. Now we see so many other people making masks. What can we do more? We are now looking at filters. How can we add a filter? How can we give a corporate packages? How can we give school packages? How can we bring sanitizers, face shields, different things that a customer will buy? So that's why, if you have a product or have a service that's happening now, introduce those add-on products, because it's about survival at this point. And survival is, I think, what SMEs are always doing, and that's why we are so resilient. So I mean, the set of skills that we have used during this crisis is not very much different from the set of skills that we use any other day to be doing our business. So I think that's really something that we need to be very conscious of as we go ahead. Like I said, to keep ahead of the competition. And finally, we need to be revisit now, just because there's a COVID situation going on, we can't be thinking only of this period. We need to revisit our business plans and see what we had thought about before. Is it relevant? How are we going to change? I mean, everything is uncertain, but we still need to be prepared. So just the last kind of closing summary of what I've been trying to say is that the future is crisis. I think Juan mentioned this as well. We experienced it during the Easter bombings last year. The country can go into shutdown at any point. The world can go into shutdown at any point, clearly. So the future is crisis. And if we don't plan for crisis, we are really not going to be able to survive in this game. So how are we going to rethink Sri Lankan business in this content? So I'm just going to break this last part down into three main pillars, which I think are most important, which is the people, the product, and the post-COVID consumer. And before we look into these three pillars, just an idea of the landscape, like I said before, is that Sri Lanka is really heading towards a local economy. At least in the next 2 years, we are going to be focusing inward. We are going to buy local, made in Sri Lanka. It's going to be very, very powerful. And also the future will demand, even globally, that businesses adapt to these ethical, sustainable, local, small businesses kind of feeling and business practices. So these are two things we have to focus on as a core, as a foundation for any of the thinking that we are doing at this moment. And again, I can't stress this enough. Uncertainty is the nature of the game. You can't be scared of this uncertainty. Embrace it. Like find joy in the fact that it is uncertain and continue to be vigilant, because really we have no other choice. So like I said, rethinking business, people. I can't stress enough, your employees, your people, your customers are the core of your business. We have to protect it. We have to think of those parties with everything that we do. And something that I've learned is that in this last month, structures have to be flatter, we have to be leaner, and we really need, and that is the only way that we are going to be more resilient in adapting to these changes. And also, especially if you're in a labor intensive sector, adapting to work from home is very, very, very important. I mean, we need to start thinking, even if there are people working in the villages, how do we get them to work from home? How do we manage to be efficient, continue to be efficient? So those are things that we are still thinking about. And when I find an answer, I'm happy to share, when I do. So product, like I said, you use your existing resources, capitalize on your existing strengths, have a mixed product portfolio, use this time to create more efficient production processes. If there's something that technology can solve, make faster, make cheaper, do it. Don't do it at the cost of your employees, but make sure that you start looking at how you can be more efficient and more fast. And if you're dependent on imported raw materials, a lot of us are, maybe there are SMEs in the country who can start filling the gaps of the other SMEs, like the raw material gaps that we have in this country. How do we do that? This is something that we need to start thinking as a sector, as a kind of a network, right? And finally, we have to start getting our supply chain in order, because like I said, when the demand comes, we have to be ready or we are going to miss out. And finally, ethical, the consumer. We are all doing business to serve the consumer, right? And ethical consumerism is not a trend. It is something that is here to stay. And if you are in business that is harming the people around you and the environment around you, you have to think twice. Consumers especially will require brands to have values behind their products. The words safety, community, integrity, transparency, authenticity, these are some of the emotions that the post-COVID consumer will demand from you. And that is not a trend. And that is something that we have to take very seriously and adapt our businesses, change our ideas to really cater to that. Finally, we have to keep talking to our customers. Use social media now. It's free, it's cheap, Don't just focus on your product, because people are not interested in buying. They're interested in values. They're interested in what will keep them safe, what will help our community, what will help our world. So just keep telling that story. And I said in the start as well, your customer will want to be online, but but your market can be closer to you than you think. So that's really what I wanted to share with you. I'm going to, yes, stop screen sharing at this point because maybe Vimukti can take over. And yeah, that's really finally what I wanted to share with you. Because SMEs in Sri Lanka, I think, have a lot of potential, not just to cater to our local economy, but also to cater to the world. And I think a made in Sri Lanka brand has to be led by the SME sector of this country. And I think this is the best time to do it. We are learning fast, we are more resilient, and we are really the backbone of our economy. So thank you very much for having me. And I hope I was able to share something. And if anyone has any further questions, they are more than willing to look me up on Facebook and, you know, just shoot me the questions and I'll try my best to answer. So thank you very much.
Selena, actually, there is a question for you in the question and answer area. I can read it for you, or you can read it by yourself. You let me know.
Sorry, I didn't want to mess with the screen while I was sharing.
Yeah, I know.
So question to Selena. For PeopleSmart, what is your main market and have you had online selling platform even? Yeah. So online selling platform, yes. I think by some luck of nature, we managed to go online in January, which was very, very well timed because I mean, it would have been a really big problem if we didn't have at that point, because we wouldn't have been able to be fast, as fast as we had to. So we did have it, but it wasn't fully functional. So it was a great test for our company, you know, working with couriers during this time, and a lot of customers scolding us because, like I said, you know, crises are not a customer wants something on time, the right product on time. So yes, answering the second part of that question. And the main market was, first we just did it thinking the local market, and we put it out, and then we had this flurry of inquiries from local corporates who wanted to support local companies and invest in their masks because they were all required to give masks to their employees, and ours was a reusable, reversible mask, and that was something that was really, really well bought, and so well taken. And then we went into the export market, and the bulk of our orders are now coming from the UK, from the US, and it's really incredible. I'm like, and everyone who's listening, I mean, you know, those decisions that we took to protect our workers, to make sure that we made a product that didn't affect the environment, really paid off, because I think, like, that's why I said in the last slide, the consumer reacted to it because it was an authentic product that was made to survive, you know, and that was something that was very beautiful. And that's why as SMEs, I think there's something that we all have within us. I think, Juan, you will also agree that we have these stories to tell. Each of us works in our communities, we work with our people, we work on the ground, right? So I think there are these beautiful stories that we are not saying, and this is the juncture that we need to start saying those stories. And we have the luxury of social media now, and we can tell our stories. So that's something we really, really need to focus on as SMEs. And
absolutely. There is another question. I want to comment on this question, and probably you can complement, because Malinga Silva is asking, when going online selling only, how to create credibility? What will increase the credibility of the company and product? And this is a topic really, really relevant, because usually behind a web page can be all the lies that you can imagine as well. So there are 2 points that I always advise companies to build credibility, not only online, but with your international buyers. Because actually when you are in a trade fair and then you find an international buyer, still is like a web page. You don't know if it's true whatever you are saying. So there are 2 things. One, certifications. I mean, get certifications, ISOs, or if you are doing food, HACCP, that is hazardous analysis and critical control points, or get fair trade certifications, or get whatever in your sector are the certifications. Get the certifications, because people will measure the quality of your products based on those certifications. And the other point is having participation or being a member of sectorial associations. Because these sectorial associations usually are, they support you internationally. And then people can say, you belong to this association, so I can ask this association references of your company, and then they can say yes or no. And this is my answer, and probably Selena has something as well to add on this.
Yeah, absolutely, Juan. I think, so again, generally, and also in the case of this pivoting with the mask, I mean, the idea of mask was lingering for quite a while, right? But we couldn't take just another mask into the market. We had to make sure that the design that we took was something that was kind of guarantees, was certified, was tested, because I think answering the second part of the question, how you increase the credibility of your company is by ensuring that you have this foolproof product, so you can't just kind of make hay while sunshine, and just because there's a demand, just supply the products, because that would mean that it finally affects your brand and it affects the credibility of your company. So we had to make sure that we had the necessary testing, the necessary credentials before we could put that product into the market. And also it says when going online selling, how to, so I think it's the same. No, I think Juan, you would also agree that online business or physical business, the way you create credibility is by telling your story, by having transparency. I think transparency is very, very important. You need to be saying where it's being made. We had to put out pictures of our manufacturing process. People were taking the necessary precautions. So I think, especially going into this, the future, I think gone are the days where companies can shut their factory gates, you can't, where they cannot disclose where their factories are, who's making the products. Consumers are asking us, where are your products made? How are you making it? So I think that's where SMEs have this really great opportunity, because we don't have the structures in our companies that will stop us from disclosing where our products are coming. We are collaborative by nature. We are sharing by nature. So I think the only way in this world to have this credibility is to be transparent and authentic and stick to it. Don't say what you're not doing. Be upfront and say, sorry, I made a mistake, but I'm going to do better next time. And I think, Juan, don't you agree? I think that's, people understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
there are some questions for you, I think, because this is specifically for your business.
Okay. Sorry, I need to read this. In the post-COVID, I think, Juan, maybe you can also comment on this. Kulanagam Kulaves Kumar is saying, in post-COVID scenario, are the local MSMEs capable to produce to the local market? In the case of importation, may be curtailed? I think maybe there are some global experiences, Juan. I think
is the one that, can you please list of some of the handloom products that you produced before COVID and the major market of those? No, I don't.
The next one.
The next one. In post-COVID scenario, are the local SMEs capable to produce to the local market in case the importation maybe could liate it? Yeah, I think, and this is the point that what I was mentioning earlier, that, I mean, if for example, if your supplier is not supplying because it was an international supplier, and then in handlooms especially, I think, I'm pretty sure that you can build that raw material at home. And then this is, if you need to innovate, you don't innovate in your company towards the customer, that you need to innovate as well toward the supplier. So help the suppliers. And I mean, I don't know, because I don't know the regions because it actually is linked to the next one. Is like, how do we empower female entrepreneurs in remote areas like Kilinok Kilinochi,
Yeah.
to withstand this situation. So you see, I'm linking the two questions because at the end is like you need to innovate even in the area of your suppliers. So maybe if you can organize a group of women by phone or whatever, I mean, using networks, and then help to people to start producing your raw materials, probably, and then of course there is going to be a shift if you cannot import these raw materials to start producing nationally the raw materials that you need. Probably will be at the beginning less quality, probably will be more expensive, but still you can move the goods, and then you can say this is pure Sri Lankan product because now we are not importing raw materials. Now we move from importing from China, and then we are doing locally the raw materials, and then you are helping everybody. It's more expensive, yes, probably accept at the beginning that is not the highest quality. Yes, but this is the new situation, and it's just for Sri Lanka. So I am linking the two questions that, yes, of course you can do. Of course, there are certain things, for example, minerals that you don't have in Sri Lanka. You cannot produce manually minerals that you cannot produce in Sri Lanka. But other things like in textiles and apparel, in food industry, definitely you can shift and then change the way you are doing things and changing suppliers. I mean, probably it's going to be more complicated, yes, but if you start now, you will reach the point that you can start moving and activating the economy in Sri Lanka.
Yeah. And to add to that as well, Juan, I'm not going to lie, we in Sri Lanka do have a disadvantage because almost everything is imported, right? I mean, we've been in a situation for the past God knows how long. We've just kept shutting down our local industries and we've started importing. So yes, we do have a challenge, but I do agree with you, Juan, like that right now we need to be, I think this is when we need to open our eyes, right? I mean, if we are going to be dependent in that sense, we should then simply be maybe in not be doing manufacturing, then we should be in services, but we are in manufacturing. So how are we going to become more dependent as a nation? And if you take our biggest sectors, which is the agriculture, the manufacturing sectors, the apparels, those two biggest sectors, I think it's time to start thinking how can we source locally. And as Juan said, yes, it will definitely be more expensive, and it won't be of as high as quality, but I think it's time to start. And I think that's where the gaps are appearing for other businesses to really start taking those opportunities. So if there's an opportunity to grow cotton and make yarn, we need to be, as even in the SME sector, we need to be looking at those opportunities. Glass bottles, I mean, I don't know whether it's made in Sri Lanka. I'm not in the food sector, but I heard that the people who've been wanting to need glass bottles to package their food can't access glass bottles. Isn't that the time to now start thinking what alternative packaging can we use? What kind of can we start making that packaging? So my point is, I don't have the answers to that all because I don't have a kind of a blanket overview of the entire SME sector. But the point here is that you need to start thinking that this opportunity is there, and if we are alert enough and if we open our eyes enough, we can actually take that opportunity. And if you move on to some other questions, again about import restrictions, I think I answered that question. I mean, we have this period where the imports are restricted, and we need to start using that period to really start thinking how can we be part of each other's supply chains. And that is where a lot of information sharing, a network, and all of that is going to really matter, because I need to know what you want if I'm going to give you what you want. And I think it's a bit of a disadvantage that we have in our country, that the SME sector is not networked in that sense, because we are cross-cutting, I think, across all sectors. So I think, I don't know, we need to start really reaching out and thinking and talking to each other, because without knowing the demand, you can't really be supplying inside the country, right? And
There
Sorry.
is one as well for you, except mask. Yeah, there is another one to Selena from Minoli de Silva.
Yeah. So I think
Except mask.
Juan,
Yeah.
you can answer this as well, because I think what Minoli is asking is, what are the products that will likely to be trending in this COVID sector? You know, because now, yes, of course, the masks, the PPEs are trending, but maybe one, like, according to your experience too, what are the global trending products that, you know, SMEs can kind of pivot into?
I mean, actually, is what you are saying is what you are doing. Your masks are beautiful right now, and then there is a huge potential on this type of products right now. And then not only masks in developing countries are using, even you see developing the new shields for the face, or new fabrics protecting people, workers, not only healthcare workers, but other people from infections and everything. So I think what you need, the recommendation is, as you were saying at the beginning, the crisis right now, you need to start monitoring the market every week, at least, if not twice a week, at least every week, to see how things are moving, what is the people are changing, or how they are changing, what kind of goods are demanded. And of course, imagine that something happened in 1 month, or nothing happened. I mean, the virus is dead in 1 month because any reason. That could happen because nobody knows about anything about this virus, and then probably people will go back to the past. I mean, with the same products. So that's why it's so important to keep tracking every day what is the trend. And of course, you and I, we don't know the trend right now because the trend is changing. I mean, in this situation, nobody in any sector know the trend, because nobody was expecting that the oil was going to be negative price, and it happened. I mean, this is unthinkable, and then happened. And then this time, if, for example, you are doing the mask, beautiful mask, and probably you are more than 100,000 masks produced, but suddenly probably it can stop as well.
It can stop tomorrow. Exactly.
Because we don't know. So unfortunately, there are no trends right now. I mean, my recommendation is, this moment is take short-term solutions for your short-term situation. I mean, you cannot import raw materials, try to solve it right now. If you cannot do it, I mean, do different things. But probably you can, once the pandemic is finished, probably you will keep certain new approaches, and then you will return to other certain approaches that you had before. But at this moment is really impossible.
Yeah, and to add to what Juan said, agreed completely. That, I mean, even so, that's where inventory management, costing, monitoring, all that becomes so important, because like setting targets. So if we've targeted for another, say, 100,000 masks, we only buy raw materials and create fabric enough for that. And that too, the fabric that is created is colors that we can use in Christmas. You know, so we have to be very, very smart, because like one said, like the trend, no trend is the new trend, right? So we have no idea what's happening. So you have to be very conscious. You can't really take the foot off the pedal at any given point. And I think some of the other sectors too, that, you know, delivery services, obvious, like catching up very, very fast. I mean, look around you. I call it famously the Chunpan model. Who want to translate it to you? Chunpan is a van that makes a sound and goes around the kind of your street selling bread. Right.
I know. Now I understand what is it.
So I mean, I actually call it the Chunpan model, because I think that right now that's a trend, delivery to your home. So there's a difference between ordering online and someone delivering it, and actually taking a mobile shop and going to someone's house. That's trending, and I feel that that trend might stay for a bit. I think people are getting used to the kind of how do you say, the luxury of having things to come home. The housewife wants to choose her vegetables now and not depend on an online order or going to the supermarket to get it. So, things like that, you have to be conscious of where the country is heading and where your neighborhood is heading, because don't think too large, because right now, as Juan said, survival is key, and you need to be looking at every opportunity to survive without, as much as possible, taking too many risks, because you can't do something that will have will land you with a massive inventory that you can't move in 6 months. You can't do that, right? So it's about being really, really vigilant. And I think
there is another question that is, I think, is super relevant right now, is how you consider the challenges, opportunities for IT sector. And I will, if you don't mind, I will answer, and then you can complement. I would say, besides healthcare sector, IT is the biggest opportunity. Challenges, yes, but biggest opportunity, because you see, because of the lockdowns, because of the lack of communication face to face, etc. Even ITC is moving to all trainings through IT, through webinars, through coachings online, because it's a workshop. You cannot do a workshop online, but we are converting in coaching sessions for small groups of 5 companies, 5 women entrepreneurs in the same group, like this webinar, but it's only for 5 when we have more a conversation. So IT has a huge opportunity right now to reconvert. Everybody is needing. Look at what I was saying, or we were saying, actually, Salina and I, we were insisting, go online, connect to your customer online, connect to your suppliers online, connect to the other networks online, then share information. And then we have so many tools that haven't been used for the majority of SMEs all around the world, because it was not needed. Right now it's needed. And then the opportunity for IT companies to reshape the services they are offering, to connect people, to help. Even now, developing web pages is too simple, and then we are more complicated or more complex IT company. No, go back to the beginnings, and then help other people to be connected. And that's what I see, a lot of opportunities, even to develop new applications, new systems. We are here in Zoom that is working very well, but it's still, there is a lot of problems for Zoom related to cybersecurity. But then if we go for another one, Skype for Business doesn't have the cybersecurity problem, but the quality of the call is not so good. So even IT companies can have the opportunity to develop so many new options, and then to support so many. The rest of the sectors need support from IT right now, more than before. So that's what I see, a huge opportunity for IT companies.
Yeah, absolutely right, Juan. And I think we can connect your answer also to what Chandra Tilakar Lianarache has asked. Online education is becoming a good service during this period. Can we educate women from rural areas on trade and business skills? For me, that is a business opportunity in itself.
Yep.
The fact that our rural communities haven't kind of embraced digitalization is a challenge at this moment, because there were parts of our workforce who we had zero contact with during this period of time. And especially that part of the population are the most vulnerable. They are the most at high risk of so many different social issues. So I think if SME, especially in the IT BPO sector, were to really think, how can we take trade and these kind of skill sharing to the rural communities? Can we do that via apps? Can we do that? How can we do that? I think there's a huge, actually, business opportunity to do good, and also to meet an opportunity in the market. And also, where someone else connecting that to something. Someone anonymous has written about shedding light on entrepreneurs at grassroots level. Exactly that. There is no one size fit all solution. There just really isn't. What Juan and I have spoken about today is a general framework on how you could survive and pivot this into like pivot out of this situation. And these are the general parameters, but I think even entrepreneurs at a grassroots level, there is a need to connect to them one-on-one on a case-by-case basis, which is not really possible with the system that we had. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity there to kind of connect to them. And I think finally, how is the current situation? I mean, the current situation is we are surviving. I think, and that's a major win at this moment because, I mean, we have no retail income. We are very fortunate that our export orders have only been postponed and not cancelled. But I mean, every month is we are working. I mean, we only know what's happening in May. we are going to restart the focus and the forecast for June. We are going to figure out how we are going to handle June, and then we'll figure out how we'll handle July. I mean, you know, being a business, that's probably not the answer you would have gotten before this situation, but that's really what it is, because you can't predict anything. And like Juan very rightly said, I mean, tomorrow I will not have, like, this COVID virus would be miraculously over, and you know, we go back to our usual way of business. But I think the lessons learned, especially when it comes to having leaner, flatter decision-making structures, those are still going to be valid going ahead. Because if we as SMEs don't remain competitive and agile and really like resilient, we are not going to be able to take that competitive advantage that we can, you know. So, I mean, no big teams, you know, it's just, you need to have flat structures. No, I mean, Sri Lanka is very, very famous for very hierarchical kind of sense of management traditionally. So there's like 10 layers of people. I mean, that doesn't work, you know. You have maybe one leader, two managers, and a team. Like you have to be flatter. You have to be like that if you're going ahead, because that collective intelligence is something that will help you to really, really kind of be fast. So, I mean, I don't think we have any more questions.
No, we can start wrapping up as well.
Excellent. So, right on time. But Juan, would you like to give your
I think it was a super nice round of questions. I mean, a lot of insights and complementing your last message. The only constant here right now is the change. So be prepared to have a different company, completely different company in the future. And it's not only, even if we go back to the old normal, use this opportunity to keep innovating all the time. And then for me, the two words are innovation, full-time, and resilience. So don't forget, because people tend to, once we pass the crisis, now we go back to the old fashioned, and then we don't prepare for the next crisis. So always keep in mind that another crisis can come, not necessarily with pandemic, but an earthquake or a restriction in your country or whatever, or in terms of imports or exports, etc. So keep in mind that you have to prepare your company to be flexible all the time, to have plan B, plan C, plan D all the time, and then being innovative. In this way, you can tackle any problem. Not any problem, I mean, but you can survive much better, in a much better position.
Yeah. And Juan, just to add one more word to your pillars, and that is to continue to be responsible, you know, because it's something that I am really strongly and passionately advocating for, because I think all these things that we are facing in this world is because we as a kind of race hasn't been responsible, right? So I think business has to be responsible. While we innovate, while we are resilient and survive, we have to be responsible. And there's an absolute business case for doing that, because the consumer, especially the young consumer who's coming in, is going to demand this from us. And there's no way around it, because if you don't have authentic, transparent kind of structures and systems already in place in your business, I think you will struggle a lot to adapt to what is going to come, especially after this COVID pandemic. So that's all I wanted to add. And yeah, I think thank everyone. thank Juan, the ITC.
Thanks, Elena. Thank you, Assam. Thank you, and team, and thank you for all participants.
Thank you very much, Juan and Selena. I think very great presentation and wonderful engagement as well with the participants. Thank you so much, everyone, for being online. There is a series of webinars that ITC is putting out globally, which there will be one next week as well. So what we will do is we'll share those details with you as participants. So keep an eye on that. The video of today's webinar will be available on the UN Sri Lanka Facebook page, as was last week's webinar. So those who missed out on last week's webinar, which was on market analysis, extremely interesting, and we had really fantastic feedback. So you could see that video as well, available online on the UN Sri Lanka Facebook page. And we also hope to have more webinars coming in for Sri Lankan SMEs to support them through this crisis. So we have supporting jobs, making sure Sri Lankan economy is working and is there not only to survive but also to thrive. So we don't leave anyone behind. So thank you very much, Selena and Juan again, and everybody who participated. Thank you very much, and have
pleasure.
a good evening.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.